My dog eat me. Let's start with the thighs, where the fatty part lies. Thick thighs save lives, quite literally this time. My flesh will taste okay, my dog will eat the pain away. 'Cause the whole world is dying, and I'm tired of surviving. If there was a zombie apocalypse, I'd let my dog eat me. The situation's dire and my house is on fire, but at least she'd be healthy. If there was a zombie apocalypse, I'd let my dog eat me. There are zombies full of lead and my friends are all dead, but at least she'd be healthy. I wish I had more time, but there goes my spine. I'm not alone because she's chewing my bones. My body's bleeding out, she's eaten half my torso now. Think I'm losing my eyesight, I've been here all night. If there was a zombie apocalypse, I'd let my dog eat me. The situation's dire and my house is on fire, but at least she'd be healthy. If there was a zombie apocalypse, I'd let my dog eat me. There are zombies full of lead and my friends are all dead, but at least she'd be healthy. If there was a zombie apocalypse.
Excuse me, sorry. I really should stop clearing my throat. This has become a habit at this point. Hello everybody. Hi. How you guys doing? Hi Gammas. Hi CJ. How are you two doing? Just give me a hot second. We are continuing where we left off. Although, keep in mind, the last story that we did was Tiki Toby, and I completely forgot where we left off. So I may have to read it again from the beginning. So it may be a pain, but I live with it. I'll live with it. Excuse me, sorry. Slight hiccup. Crack my wrist. Jesus. Okay. Oh my God, Jesus. Let me just get. Okay, I don't think that this is gonna let me do this. I have this I'm subscribed to the person that does the songs. Am I? I don't remember if I am. Yeah, no, I'm not. Okay. Guess I gotta find. Hold on. Okay. Let me just get the stories out. Should I tell the story of Laughing Jack and Eyeless Jack? Yeah, I should. As much as both creep me out, sorry, I forgot how creepy these creepypastas are. Oh, hold on, I gotta lay down for this. Whew. Oh my God. Okay. Oh, there's a lot of good ones. Hmm. I already know that I'm gonna get chills from reading these. Okay. I'm like mentally preparing myself for this. I've heard of that. That one. I've heard of that one. You know what? Let's go. Sorry. I'm like looking up like the different creepypastas I could read, and one of them was Backrooms, and I'm like, woohoo! I gotta do that. Okay. I think that's enough stories. I think. That may change if I want to tell, what's it called? Urban legends. That may change. I have a feeling it will, because I bounce back and forth when it comes to scary stories. Okay. Who's ready for Tiki Toby from the beginning? Because I forgot where we left off last time, so I may have to restart it. And it looks like chat's being extremely quiet. I've done part 1, let's do part 2. Okay. Just start this. Okay. Where's it? Okay. The long road home seemed to go on and on. The road continued to stretch in front of the vehicle endlessly. The light that shone through the branches of the tall green trees danced across the window in random patterns, and every once in a while, obnoxiously shining in your eyes. The surroundings were full of deep green trees, forming a forest around the road. The only sound was the sound of the car's engine as it traveled down the path. It was peaceful and left a serene feeling. Although the ride seemed like a nice one, it lacked every form of quote-unquote nice from its 2 passengers. The middle-aged woman behind the steering wheel had neat, short brown hair that fit her complexion quite well. She wore a green V-neck t-shirt and a pair of blue jeans. Diamond stud earrings decorated each of her ears, but partially shown from behind her haircut. She had deep green eyes, which her shirt brought out, and the lighting seemed to make them more noticeable. There wasn't anything significant about her appearance. She looked like any other quote-unquote average mother you would see on TV shows, and like however, the one thing that made her different than the average mothers was the dark bags she had under her eyes. Her facial expression was gloomy and sad. Although she generally looked like someone who smiled a lot, she would sniffle every once in a while, and occasionally glance in the rearview mirror to look at her son in the back seat, who was hunched over partially, with his arms held tight to his chest, and his head pressed against the cold window. The boy lacked any normal appearance, and anyone could plainly see there was something wrong with him. His messy brown hair went every which way, and the luminescent lighting brought out his pale, almost gray skin. His eyes were dark, unlike his mother's, and he wore a white t-shirt and scrub pants that he had been provided for him by the hospital. The clothes he had worn before were so shredded and bloodstained that they weren't wearable anymore. The right side of his face, bared with a few cuts, along with a split eyebrow. His right arm was bandaged all the way up to the shoulder, which had been shredded when his right side hit the shattered glass. His injuries appeared to be painful, when in reality, he couldn't feel anything. This was just one of the glories of being him. One of the challenges he had to face while growing up was growing up with a rare disease that caused him to go completely numb towards pain. Never before had he felt himself get hurt. He could have lost an arm and felt nothing. The other major disorder he faced, which was the one that deemed him many insulting nicknames in a short time he attended grade school before he switched to homeschooling, was his Tourette's syndrome, which caused him to tick and twitch in ways he couldn't control. He would crack his neck uncontrollably and twitch every once in a while. The kids would tease him and call him Ticky Toby, and they mocked him with exaggerating twitching and laughing. It got so bad he turned to homeschooling. It was too hard for him to be in a common learning environment with seemingly every kid poking or more like stabbing fun at him. Toby stared blankly out the window, his face empty of any emotion. Every few minutes his shoulder, arm, or foot would twitch. Every bump that had the car tires hit would make his stomach turn. Toby Rogers was the boy's name, and the last thing Toby remembered riding in a car was when it crashed. That's all he thought about, unconsciously replaying everything he remembered before he blacked out, over and over again. Toby had been the lucky one. His sister had not been so lucky. When a thought of his sister came, he couldn't help the tears that welled in his eyes. The horrible memories replayed in his mind. Her screaming that had been cut off when the front of the car was smashed in. It all went blank for a moment before Toby opened his eyes to see his sister's body. Her forehead pierced with glass shards, her hips and legs crushed under the force of the steering wheel, and her torso pushed in from the too-late inflated airbag. That was the last thing he had seen of his dear older sister. The road home continued on, and for what seemed like forever. It took so long to get home because his mom wanted to avoid the sight of the crash. When the surroundings gave way to a familiar neighborhood, they were both more than ready to get out of the car and step back into their own home. It was an older neighborhood with quaint little houses all next to each other. The car drove in front of a blue house with white window panes. They both quickly quickly noticed that the old vehicle that was parked in front of the house, and the familiar figure that stood in the driveway. Toby felt automatic anger and frustration take over him at the sight of his father. His father, who wasn't there. His mother pulled the car into the driveway beside him before turning off the engine and preparing to step out and face her husband. "Why is he here?" Toby said quietly as he looks back at his mother, who reached to open the car door. "He's your father, Toby. He's here because he wants to see you." His mother responded in a monotone voice, trying to sound less shaky. Yeah, could I drive up to the hospital to see Lyra before she died?" Toby narrowed his eyes out the window. "He was drunk that night, honey. He couldn't drive." "Yeah, when is he not?" Toby pushed the door open before his mother and stumbled out onto the driveway, where he met his father's gaze before looking down at his feet with a stern expression. His mother stepped out behind him and met her husband's eyes before walking around the car. His father opened up his arms, expecting a hug from his wife, but she walked past him and put her arms around Toby's shoulder and started leading him inside. "Connie?" Her husband began in a raspy voice. "What? No welcome home hug, huh?" She ignored her husband's obnoxious words and walked past him with her son under her arm. "Hey, he's 16. He can walk by himself." His father began to follow them in. "He's 17. Connie glared back before opening the door to Fasten stepping inside. "Toby, why don't we get into your room to rest, okay? I'll come get you when dinner's ready." "No, I'm 16. I can walk by myself," Toby said sarcastically and glared back at his father before stumbling up the small staircase that got allowed. Before stumbling up the small staircase and turning into his room, where he slammed the door violently. His little room didn't have much in it. Just a small bed, a dresser, a window, and his walls had a few picture frames of his family, back when they were a family. Before his father became an alcoholic and acted violently toward the rest of his family. Toby remembered when he was arguing with his mother, and he grabbed her by the hair and shoved her to the floor. And when Lyra tried to break it up, he pushed her, and she hit her back on the corner of the kitchen counter. Toby could never forgive him for what he did to his mother and his sister. Never. Hi, Gear Bear, how's it going? Toby didn't care how much his father beat him down. He couldn't feel it anyways. What he did care about was how he intentionally hurt the only two people he cared about. And when he was waiting in the hospital where his sister took her last breaths, the only one who didn't rush there was his dad. Toby stood by the window and looked out at the street. He could have sworn he saw something out of the corner of his eye. but quickly blamed it on the meds he was on. When dinner time had come, and his mother called up to him, Toby came down the stairs and hesitantly sat down at the table across from his father, and in between his mother and an empty chair. It was quiet as his parents picked at their food, but Toby refused to eat. Instead, he just watched his father with a blank stare. His mother caught him staring at him and elbowed him slightly. Toby looked over at her and slightly, and then down at his uneaten food, which he still didn't touch. Toby laid in bed. He pulled his covers over his head and stared at the window. He was tired, but there was no way he would have fall asleep. That sounds like someone I know. Anyway, he couldn't. There was too much to think about. He had been debating on whether or not to follow his mother's directions and forgive his father, or continue holding a grudge with his boiling hatred. He heard his door creak open, and his mother padded into the room and sat on the bed next to him. She reached over and rubbed his back, which had been turned to her. I know it's hard, Toby. Trust me. I understand. But I promise you, it will get better, she said softly. When is he going to leave? Toby said with an innocent tone in a shaky voice. Connie let her gaze fall down to her feet. I don't know, honey. He's staying as far as I know, she replied. Toby didn't respond. He just continued to look forward at the wall, while holding his damaged arm near his chest. After a few minutes of silence, his mother sighed before she leaned in to kiss his cheek, stood up to walk out of the room. Good night, she said as she closed the door. The hours passed slowly, and Toby couldn't quit tossing and turning. Every time he let his imagination take over, he heard the screeching of the tires, the screaming of his sister, and he would uncontrollably jerk in bed. He threw off his covers and laying on his back, he pulled his pillow over his face and cried into it. He could hear his own pitiful weeping. He would have been screaming and crying if he didn't press his pillow over his face. After a few seconds, he threw the pillow off his face and sat up, hunched over, holding his head and breathing roughly, tears streaming from his eyes. He couldn't help but cry. He tried to keep it in, but he couldn't stop the whining and whimpering as he sat there shaking. He inhaled before he stood up and walked around his bed to the window and peered out, taking deep breaths, trying to calm down. He rubbed his eyes and looked out at the group of tall pine trees across the street. He stopped suddenly, and his gaze slowly centered on something standing under the streetlight. He heard ringing in his ears and couldn't look away. The figure stood beside the streetlight, about two feet shorter than it did. Long arms draped at its sides and stared up at him with non-existing eyes. The figure had no facial features to speak of. No eyes, no mouth, no nose. Yet it held Toby's hypnotized stare, seemingly peering into his very being. The ringing in his ears grew louder and louder. Each second he stared, before suddenly it all went black. Creepy! The next morning, Toby woke in his bed. He felt different. He wasn't tired at all. And when he consciously woke up, it felt like he had been lying there awake for hours. He had no thoughts flowing through his mind. He sat up slowly and stumbled over to the wall. But when he stood, he automatically felt dizzy. He stumbled to the doorway and walked down the stairs. His parents were sitting at the table. His father was tuned in to the small TV that sat on the countertop, and his mother was reading the newspaper. She quickly looked over when she felt Toby's presence looming behind her. "Well, good morning, sleepyhead. You've been sleeping for so long." She greeted him with a hesitant smile. Toby slowly looked over at the clock and noticed that it was 12:30 p.m. "I made you breakfast, but it got cold. I was gonna wake you, but I felt you needed sleep." Her expression fell from happy to worried as her son resisted responding to her. "Are you all right?" Toby stumbled over and sat by his father. He felt as if he was on idle and had no control over his actions. He was seeing everything he did, but it didn't register in his brain properly. He reached out to his father's arm, but his hand ended up getting slapped. His father turned to him abruptly and pushed his chair over with his feet. "Don't touch me, boy!" he yelled. His mother stood up. All right, knock that off. That is the last thing we need." The days went by, and things continued on as they were. Connie spent most of her time cleaning the house, and her rude husband spent most of his time ordering her around. It was just like how it used to be before the crash. Toby never really left his room. He would sit by his bed and tremble. His mind would wander, but his thoughts changed too fast to be remembered. He would pace around his small room. He, like a caged animal, or stare out the window. The unhealthy cycle continued. I'm doing okay. Excuse me. I'm doing okay today. I'm doing okay. Connie continued to be pushed around by her husband, being way too submissive to him, and Toby remained in his room. Before he could think twice, he would begin to chew on his hands, tearing the flesh from his fingers. He would gnaw his hands until they bled. When his mother when his mother walked in on him when he was doing so, she reacted horribly. She rushed him downstairs, grabbed the first aid kit, wrapped his hands in bandages. Afterwards, she demanded that he wouldn't leave her sight again. Toby isolated himself so much that he grew to hate being around others. His memory grew glitchy as well. He'd start losing memory of minutes, hours, days, and so on. He would begin talking nonsense about things completely unrelated to the conversations he would have. He'd go off about seeing things, sharks in a sink as he washed the dishes, hearing crickets in his pillows, and seeing ghosts outside his bedroom window. His mother grew so anxious about his mental health that she decided it would be good for him to talk to a professional about what he was feeling. Connie walked Toby into the building, holding his hands and guiding him in. She walked him up to the front desk and began talking to the lady who sat behind it. "Mrs. Rogers?" the lady asked. "Yes, that's me." Connie nodded. "We're here to see Dr. Oliver. I'm here with Toby Rogers." "Yes, right this way." The lady stood up and led them down a long hallway. Toby looked at the framed artwork down the halls and tuned in to the sound of the lady's high heels on the hardwood floor. She opened the door to a room with a table and 2 chairs. "If we can, get him to sit here for a few minutes. I'll get the doctor." She smiled and held the door open. Toby stumbled into the room and sat down at the table. He looked over at his mother and the lady before the door slowly shut behind them. He looked around the room before he held up his tightly bandaged hands and began to bite at the bandages to unwrap his hands. But he was interrupted as the door swung open and a young woman in a black and spotted dress with light blonde hair stepped in, holding a clipboard and a pen. "Toby?" she asked with a smile. Toby looked up at her and nodded. "Nice to meet you, Toby. My name is Dr. Oliver." She put her hand out for. She put her hand out. Sergeant. She put her hand out from to shake, but hesitantly pulled it away when she noticed his bandaged hands. "Oh," she smiled nervously before clearing her throat and sitting it in a chair across the table from him. So, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Try to answer them as honestly as possible, okay? She puts her clipboard down on the table. Toby nodded slowly and held his restrained hands in his lap. How old are you, Toby? 17. He responded quietly. She wrote that down on the paper that was clipped onto the clipboard. What is your full name? Toby Aaron Rogers. When's your birthday? April 28th. Who's your immediate family? Toby paused for a minute before answering her question. My mom, my dad, and he stopped. My sister. I heard about your sister, dear. I'm really sorry. Her expression faded into a sad, pity-filled look. Toby nodded. Do you remember anything from the crash, Toby? Toby looked away from her. His mind went blank for a moment. He looked down on his lap, then the surrounding area. He heard a faint ringing in his ears. His eyes widened and froze in place. Toby? The counselor asked. Toby, are you listening? Toby felt a shiver go down his spine until he froze once again and slowly looked over out the little window through the door where he saw it. A dark, featureless figure peering in at him. He stared, eyes widened. The ringing grew louder and louder until suddenly the loud voice of the counselor broke his trance. Toby! She yelled. Toby jumped and fell sideways off his chair and backed up into the corner. Dr. Oliver stood up, holding her clipboard to her chest, a surprised look in her eyes. Toby met her eyes again, his breath hitching as he twitched. That night, Toby lay in bed. His eyes were dazed as he stared straight up at the ceiling. He could feel himself begin to doze off when he heard the sound of scattering of footsteps down his hallway. He sat up and looked toward the doorway. His door was wide open. There was no light. Everything was lit by the luminescent blue glow of the moon through his window, leaving a cold lighting. He stood up and slowly made his way toward the doorway when suddenly the door, which was previously wide open, slammed in his face. He gasped and fell back. He was out of breath when he hit the ground. Then he began breathing heavily, his eyes wide open. He waited for a few seconds before getting back on his feet. He reached out and grasped the cold door handle with his bandaged hand, and it creaked open. He looked out into the dark hallway and tiptoed out of his room. The window at the end of the hallway lit up with the darkness with blue moonlight. As he padded his way down, it could hear footsteps rustling around him and faint giggling, followed by the pitter-patter of small feet, which sounded like a child had run in front of him, giggling and running around. The hallway was a lot longer than he remembered. It seemed endless, like the ride home from the hospital. He heard the door creak in front of him. "Mom?" He called in a shaky voice. Suddenly, a door slammed behind him, and he jumped and turned around. Behind him, he heard a long, eerie groan that sounded like croak right in his ear. He turned around as fast as he could, and was suddenly face to face with none other than his dead sister. Her eyes were clouded white, her pale skin, the right side of her jaw dangling there by tissue and muscle, glass protruding from her forehead, black blood leaking down her face. Her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, as it always was, and she was wearing her gray t-shirt and athletic shorts, which were dirty and spotted with blood. Her legs were bent in ways they shouldn't be. She stood emitting a long croaking noise, only an inch away from Toby's face. Toby yelped and fell back. "Ah!" He started to crawl backward away from her, but he was unable to break eye contact. He held with her blank, dead eyes. He dragged himself backwards until he backed up into something. He stopped for a second. Everything was dead silent, except for his heavy breathing and crying. He slowly looked up to meet the blank face of a tall, dark figure, the same figure that stood over him now. Behind the tall, dark mask were rows of children, looking to range from 3 to 10 years old. Their eyes completely black, and dark black blood leaked from their eye sockets. He screamed and stood up as fast as he could, only to be tripped by dark black tendrils that wrapped around his ankles. He fell straight on his stomach and got the wind knocked out of him. He tried to scream, but he couldn't make a sound. He wheezed out before it all went black. Toby woke with a start. He screamed out and sat up as fast as he could, completely short on breath. He wheezed out and held his chest with his bandaged hands. It was just a dream. Just a dream. He lay back down on his bed and rolled over on his side. It felt like against the weight been lifted off his chest as he took in deep breaths. He stood up and padded over to his window. He saw nothing. Nobody was out there. No ghosts, no figures, nothing. He heard the rustling and coughing of his father outside the doorway. His door closed. He walked over and opened it. Looking out into the hallway once again, he padded down the hallway and into the kitchen, where he found his dad standing and having a smoke in the living room. Toby waited for a second and watched him from around the corner before a burning feeling started deep in his chest. Deep boiling anger overtook him. He heard the little imaginary voices in his head. Do it, do it, do it, they chanted. He turned away and held his arms. He felt like he had actual control over himself, unlike he did for the past few weeks since he got home from the hospital. He actually had complete thoughts for just moments before the little chanting of the voices in his head clouded them. Kill him. He wasn't there. He wasn't there. Kill him. Kill him. They continued on. Toby trembled. No. He wasn't going to do it. What, was he going crazy? No. He won't kill anyone. He can't. He hated his father, but there was no way he was going to kill him. That was it. The last thought he had before he fell into an idle state once again. The influence of the voices in his head was too much. He began to silently walk up to behind his father. He reached over the counter to the knife in the case. He gripped it in his hand. He felt the sensation take over his chest. He let out a snicker. I can't do that laugh because, as you guys can hear, my voice is giving out. He began laughing so hard, he had to gasp for breath. His father turned around abruptly before he felt a brute force shove him into the floor. He grunted as the air was knocked out of him. What? He looked up at the boy who stood over him, grasping the kitchen knife in his hand. Toby, what are you doing? He went to sit up and put his arms out in front of him in self-defense. But before he knew it, Toby was on top of him. He went to grab his neck, but his father reached out and blocked his hand by grabbing onto his wrist. Stop! Get off of me, you little fucker! He yelled. And with his other hand, he threw an off-center punch toward Toby's shoulder, but he didn't stop. The look in Toby's eyes was not sane. It looked as if a demon had taken control of him. He yelled back and went to stab the knife into his father's chest, but his father blocked him and grabbed him onto his wrist once again. He shoved him back, but Toby kicked his feet in front of him and landed a hard blow straight to his father's face. His father recoiled and pulled his arms away to cuff his face. But Toby got back up and drove the knife straight into his shoulder. His father let out a loud cry and went to pull the knife out. But before he could, Toby threw his fist straight into his face. He began to pound his fist into his head, laughing and wheezing. He cracked his neck, grabbed the knife, and ripped it out of his father's shoulders. He drove it deep into his father's chest and repeatedly stabbed into his torso, blood spilling out and getting splattered everywhere. He didn't stop until his father's body went completely still. He threw the knife over to the side and leaned over his body, coughing and panting. He stared at his father's smashed-in face and sat there twitching until a loud scream broke the silence. He looked over to see his mother standing a few feet away, covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Toby!" she screamed. Why did you do that?" she cried. "Why?" she screamed. Toby stood up and began to back away from his father's bloody corpse. He began to back out of the kitchen. He looked down at the blood-soaked bandages on his hands and looked up at his mother one last time before he turned and ran out of the house. He ran into the garage and slammed his hand against the control panel on the wall and pushed the button to open a garage door. Before he ran out, he noticed his father's hatchets, which had been hanging on a tool rack above a table full of jars filled to the brim with old rusted nails and screws. One of the hatchets was new. It had been a bright orange handle and a shiny blade. The other was old, with a wooden handle and an old dull blade. He grabbed both and looked down at the table, and he saw a box full of matches, and under the table was a red gasoline tank. He held both hatchets in one hand and grabbed 2 matches and gasoline before running out the garage, down the driveway and up the street. As he approached the streetlight, he could see out his own bedroom window. He heard police sirens in the distance. He turned around, and the red and blue flashing lights came rushing down the street. Toby stood for a second before he pulled the cap off the gasoline tank and ran down the street, spilling gasoline all over the street after him. He turned and ran into trees. Oh, that was an ad. Never mind. He poured the last bit of gasoline out before he reached into his pockets and pulled out a match. He struck it against the box and immediately dropped it. In an instant, flames burst around him. Fire caught on the trees and bushes around him, and before he knew it, he was surrounded by fire. The silhouettes of the police cars were visible through the flames as he backed away into the forest around him. He looked around, but his vision was blurred. His heart was pounding. And he closed his eyes for a moment. This was it. This was the end. Toby felt a hand on his shoulder. He opened his eyes and looked over to see a large white hand with long bony fingers resting on his shoulder. He followed the the arm that was attached to a dark, towering figure. It appeared to be wearing a black suit, and his face was completely blank. It towered over Toby's small frame as it looked down on him. Tendrils reached out from its back. Before Toby knew it, his vision was blurred, and he had shh. And he heard the sound of ringing in his ears. Everything went blank. That was it. That was the end. Shh. That was how Toby Rogers died. Shh. A few weeks later, Connie sat in her sister's shh. Blue, no. Connie sat in her sister's Blue. One second, chat. No. No barking. Okay? No. No. And I'm back. Sorry about that. A few weeks later, Connie sat in her sister's kitchen. His sister Lori sat next to her, drinking a cup of coffee. About 3 weeks ago, Connie lost her husband and her son, and a few weeks before, she had lost her daughter to a car crash. Since then, she moved in with her sister. The police were keeping her busy. They had just finished clearing up the case, and the story had been released 2 weeks ago. The focus on the world seemed to have shifted to completely new stories. Lori switched on the TV, onto a news broadcast. On the TV, the news reporter began introducing the news headlines. We have breaking news. Last night, there have been reported the murder of 4 individuals. There are no suspects yet, but the victims were a group of middle school kids who had been out in the woods last night. The kids had been, I don't know how to say that, buljoned, I think that's how I say it, and stabbed to death. The investigators have discovered a weapon at the crime scene. It appears to be an old, dull blade hatchet, as you can see here. The picture of the picture changed to show snapshots of the weapon, exactly as it was left for the crime scene. Looks like a random ad on it. Investigators have pulled the name of a possible suspect, Toby Rogers, a 17-year-old boy who stabbed his father to death a few weeks ago and tried to cover up his escape by setting fire in the streets and forest around the neighborhood. Although they believe the young boy had died in the fire, the investigators suspect Rogers might still be alive due to the fact that his body was never found. God, my door hurts. But that was Tiki Toby. much time let's put with the music. Almost an. I think we still some time. I think. I don't know how much time is left on the music. And Jesus Christ, a huge chunk was. Oh my God. I don't know why it took so long. Like the reading itself is like 17 minutes, which is not that long. I felt like I was reading it for like 40 minutes. I don't know why. We'll rewind to here. I have to hydrate. May I? My Chromebook was doing a weird thing. Also, I just noticed this, but CJ, did you change your color to green? Did you change your color to green? Cause yesterday when you commented, it was a purple. I don't know if it's a randomized color thing, or if you changed it to green. I don't know. Alright, let's keep going. Mr. Smiley. One that I heard about, but don't remember much of. Okay. Looking back now, all I can see is his damn face. It looks at me as I close my eyes. I could see the dripping of the black liquid as it falls from his eternal smiling mouth. His teeth are small and sharp and sit in rows, like a shark's do. I'm not sure why, but he let me live. Not again. I cannot let it happen again. I will tell you the tale now of how I met the entity I call Mr. Smiley. Although it might just be better to refer the creature as it. Seeing as the only thing that stays consistent, it is the smile. I was just playing a harmless game of hide and seek with some kids from the neighborhood. Shh. When everything happened, we decided it would be fun to play the game in the woods, as there were more places to hide. Most of the woods in the area where I live have various paths of logging and mining, so getting lost was almost impossible, as just about Everywhere there are pathways that lead back to the main roads. Sleepwell gear. We were not that worried about hiding. Either way, either the trees or bushes, the mounds of leaves, and the small caves and underpasses made excellent places to hide. We began with a few simple rules that made the game difficult and arguably more fun. The first rule we made was that because a few of us were not very strong in terms of how far our voice could carry over longer distances, as flu and cold season was upon us, and a few of us had sore throats, namely Timmy, Jimmy, Ricky, Sarah, and Timothy. Why are there so many Y's? Although we were stumbled as to how to make signals, we're ready. We heard the falling of a tree, not uncommon, as the area was under logging in certain parts. Only as we heard it, a thought came to mind. We could use wood knocking to signal if we're ready. 1 knock for not yet, and 2 for ready. This was a relatively simple rule. Not gonna lie, that kind of does sound simple. I'm not gonna lie. Like that does sound simple. Like that does sound simple. The second rule said that we could not go out of the range of where the knocking could be heard. This took a while to figure out. In a circle, how far could we go? The third rule, which was also the final one, went without saying. In hide and seek, no one could help the seeker find the others. That's the general rule. So in the beginning, I lost at rock, paper, scissors the most times. And the 11 other kids got to hide. As was tradition in all the games of hide and seek that we played, I waited until everyone knocked twice with their sticks, right at that moment. I should have noticed it. Shh. But I paid no heed. 1 second. What have I said about working? No, Big Brother's sleeping. Big Brother's sleeping. No. Right at that moment, I should have noticed it, but I paid no heed because I thought someone was being a smart ass. The number of knocks I heard was not 24. It was 26, meaning that someone had knocked 4 times. Or so I thought. As I began my search, I found most of the others within an hour of looking. Jimmy was at a pile of leaves and jumped when he saw a spider, allowing me to find him easily. Sarah let go of a branch she was using to balance on a tree and fell to the ground with a thud, alerting me to where she was. Ricky was stuck and crying in a small cave. It took a whole five minutes for me to pull him out. As for Timothy, he tried hiding in a blueberry bush, which made him an easy one due to the cut thorns still stuck to him. I was quickly able to round up Carrie, Ginger, Michael, and Josh because they were in the same cave, just within different portions of it. John and Richard were no trouble because they were fighting over the ideal hiding spot in a old cabin. The last one was Kevin. He was the hardest to find of all. And I wish that he had chosen a better hiding spot. We found Kevin, and as it began to grow dark, we were huddled in the closet of the cabin, repeating, "The trees are smiling." We thought that he was trying to play a prank on us, as he was the last one we found. But then Sarah screamed at the window of the house. There was a tree that was odd, because of 2 distinct figures. One was the fact that it was a different color than the other trees. The bark was almost black, with green here and there. The second was in the center of a tree. There was a mouth that curved in a smile, and the mouth opened up. We saw a row of sharp teeth that began to grow longer. Larger the longer it keeps its mouth open, as if it were a living thing. We shut the door of the cabin and began to watch the thing. It grew darker outside the cabin. Its smile grew wider and larger, and began to drool a black liquid. I had no way of knowing that it was not there at the window at the time. But I knew if we left the cabin, it could get us. I did not sleep, not a wink. The next morning, we took a roll call and realized that our parents would be looking for us by now. Somehow, it knew and smiled and vanished, but none of us would leave the cabin, as it could merely be waiting. As the day dragged on, we searched a small 4-room cabin to find why it was not able to come in. We found nothing. But as the day progressed, the creature did not return. Around dusk, Sarah's mom was the first parent to come looking for us, and we stepped nervously outside of the cabin.
And some chicken and fries.
Yes, please. Alright, I'm back, chat. Fortunately, it is time to wrap it up because it is getting late. And we did go past streaming time, so. Foxo Bongo and Honey? I don't know if you two followed, but I don't know if you followed yet. But if you did, thanks for the follow. I really appreciate it. Let's read it. Excuse me. Okay. Okay, Blue. Audi. Score. I spelled it right, did I? And it's red, I cannot see. He's blue. Obviously, if I could see it. But thanks you guys so much for coming to the stream. I really appreciate it. And anybody who possibly followed, I apologize if I didn't see. Oh shit, thumbs up. Okay. Excuse me. I will see you. Sorry, my dog's like crazy. Okay. I'll see you guys next time.